Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I have a great guest coming on, Mark Skousen, the founder of Freedomfest, which he founded in 2007, so it's 9 years old now, and is pretty much the biggest freedom conference in the world. Great conference if you haven't been to it. But it's not just anarchists, it's libertarians, objectivists, minarchists, constitutionalists, all kinds of people, so it's a little different than Anarchapulco in that sense. He's also very well known for many things. He's an author, he's a college professor, he's coming into us right now from campus where he's teaching, and he's done many things. He's also pretty much an Austrian economics expert, and very interestingly, he's kind of sort of already picked a couple fights. He's coming to Anarchapulco, and he's going to debate Larkin Rose. He's going to take the minarchist stance versus Larkin Rose with the anarchist stance, and he's also picked a bit of a fight with Walter Block, Mr. Libertarian, about Hayekian triangles, which is pretty in-depth Austrian economics stuff if you're into that. So going to be interesting stuff to see Mark down here. And Mark, great to have you on. And the question that a lot of people are going to be asking is Mark an anarchist? Because he actually does often argue for the minarchist side against anarchists. And I guess, but before I let you talk, Mark, I'll just let people know you've written many things that pretty much can be construed as being anarchist sort of writing, including your persuasion versus force article, and many other things that you've done like that. Many of your quotes sound very anarchist. So my take on it is that you're more of a philosophical anarchist, but in real life, you're more of a pragmatist. You think that we still need some small form of government at this moment in time, which is fine. That's, no one has any proof that anarchy would totally work in the world today. So, Mark, what's your take? Are you anarchist, minarchist? What do you call yourself?
Well, I do try to avoid labels, and in fact, at Freedom Fest, I always give a talk at the beginning of Freedom Fest and say, let's treat everyone as an individual and avoid labels as much as possible. So I have, in fact, when I wrote Persuasion versus Force, actually it's a collaborative effort with my wife Joanne and I. She's an English professor, and she was very useful and very helpful in providing her own perspective as we co-authored this pamphlet, Persuasion versus Force, which has we printed up over 100,000 copies, and it's available. People just type in Persuasion versus Force, it will pop up on the internet. And but essentially what we said in there was that the triumph of persuasion over force is the sign of a civilized society. And in fact, I took issue with Holmes, who made the famous statement that's on the IRS building that taxation is the price we pay for civilization. And I made the argument that taxation is the price we pay for failing to build a civilized society. The higher the tax rate, the greater the failure. The lower the tax rate, the greater the success of a civilized society. And so the ultimate failure is totalitarianism. The ultimate success is a totally voluntary society. So that quote has been picked up by quite a few of the anarchists making that point. And I guess in a lot of ways, it is an ideal type of society to have a totally voluntary society. I think there's obviously a lot of problems with that from a practical point of view, but and we certainly live in a world with a very high level of government. In fact, I would argue that your movement, the anarchist movement, if you will, that you are leading with a conference devoted where everybody comes together from an anarchist point of view it probably exists because government's simply too big, too intrusive, too invasive in our lives. And I suspect if we had a mini government, if we had true laissez-faire where they limited it to defense and instead of and law and so on, instead of the welfare state and the regulatory state and the fascist state, probably we wouldn't worry about it. It wouldn't be an issue. But I think that's what the phenomenon that's going on that you found literally hundreds, perhaps thousands of people who follow your perspective.
Yeah, your instincts are totally right. And I've said this before, that if we really did have a minarchist government, we had a tiny government all over the world, not just in the US, but everywhere. And they were tiny and they didn't really do much except for those few basic things that some people think they're necessary for security and courts and things like that. I wouldn't definitely not be doing this. I'd be so happy. I'd be fine. I might mention it from time to time that, hey, let's just get rid of the last little bit. If this is so good, why not the last little bit? But I definitely wouldn't focus on it, because we'd be so close to being to where I think it'd be the best possible situation for humanity.
Yeah, and Jeff, I would say when you read almost every front page of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or any major newspaper tells stories of where government has abused their privilege and abused the rights of their citizens. I mean, what just happened in Oregon, where these people, they got so sick and tired of the government regulations on land, their land or federal land or what have you, that they ended up in an armed conflict. And when the EPA starts destroying people's businesses, when the IRS closes people down for Obamacare or what have you, you can see how people get really angry and they start saying, what is going on here? It's just way out of line.
Yeah, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I guess you could say that the anarchist movement, which is growing,
is at work here. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you can only push people so far, and you pointed out what happened in Oregon. Those people, at least a few of them, got pushed to the point where they said, we're just going to do this or die, essentially. And that, it seems that's a big thing about freedom, is it does really go to the point of death. A lot of people who really believe in it will stand up for it, but a lot of people will take a lot of oppression, a lot of tyranny, but once it gets to a certain point, they just say that's enough. And I think we're getting pretty close to that point with a lot of people, so it's going to be interesting. And let me ask you about Freedomfest. You started in 2007. What's been your take on just the general amount of people who are starting to wake up and get more interested in the concepts of liberty and freedom, as opposed to 2007?
Well, we bill ourselves as the largest gathering of free minds, so we try to use a term that's pretty open, and so we attract people across the political spectrum, actually. So they're not just libertarians or anarchists or conservatives or constitutionalists or what have you. We actually have a number of what I like to call social democrats who believe in a major role of government, who come and express their views and are treated civilly and respectfully, which is really important in my opinion. But we've grown quite a bit. 2007, we had 1,000 people at our first conference, and this last year we had 2,500 people. We had major media coverage with CNN and Fox News. We even had the Daily Mail and Playboy magazine there. So we're really attracting a very large audience. We did have some controversial figures there, political figures. We did have Donald Trump speak, and he frankly created quite a circus atmosphere. And I was rather disappointed that a lot of the audience agreed with his ideas regarding immigration control and things like that. But I do admire him for at least defending without any embarrassment that he's a wealthy man. That was really nice. That's refreshing to see someone, Mitt Romney, 4 years earlier, was kind of embarrassed about his wealth. And so I was glad to see Donald Trump take a kind of an Ayn Randian point of view that wealth is a good thing. Now, to the extent that he gets it from crony capitalism, that's a bad thing. But when you do it on the free market through voluntary exchange, we should never apologize for our wealth. So we like that. But we had Peter Thiel come, who's very libertarian. We had Steve Wynn of Wynn Resorts. speak. We have John Stossel do his show there every year. This year, we have quite a few fun events. We have George Foreman coming, the former heavyweight champion of the world, and he's been a very successful entrepreneur with his Foreman Grill, sold it for $138 million. So a lot of people are excited about meeting and hearing his perspective on what he calls the knockout entrepreneur. We have Judge Andrew Napolitano, who is definitely the most libertarian judge that you will find on Fox News.
Yeah, he's an anarcho-capitalist. He's been on Anarchast, so that's great.
Yeah, so he's coming. That'll be his first time in 3 years. We expect Stossel to return. We're still in negotiations with that. We have a Libertarian CEO panel with John Mackey of Whole Foods and with John Allison, a former BB&T Bank and the Cato Institute. We have Bill Bonner coming. Bill Bonner is coming for the first time to Freedomfest, and we'll be talking about Agora Financial. He, by the way, has written a very controversial book called Family Fortunes, and he makes some very radical statements in there that we're going to raise at our Libertarian CEO panel, so you won't want to miss that. And then the big thing that we're doing that your audience and you will be really interested in, we're doing a special new session called LibX. And LibX is where libertarians defend their most radical positions. For example, Doug Casey is going to argue for open borders, absolute open borders. So that'll be very much in contrast to the Donald Trump thesis. We're going to have someone to speak on total and complete drug legalization and the abolishment of the FDA. So you can try any drugs you want without any kind of government approval. We even have Jeff Tucker making the case to abolish all drunk driving laws. So that is probably going to be the most controversial statement that he makes. And of course, we'll have the anarchist position of no taxes whatsoever. I think Ed Stringham is speaking on that, but we could have plenty of you talking about no taxes and you know, kind of an anarchy type of position. Now, you will have to defend your position because we are going to have in a counter, we're going to have a person who is going to be there to critique your point of view. Randy Barnett, for example, is a legal authority, a law professor at George Mason University. He's going to be one of them who's going to be making that argument. So I think it's going to be standing room only in these LibX sessions, and I hope all of your people can come. Our dates are July 13th through the 16th. We take over Planet Hollywood in Las Vegas. So, as you know, it's a lot of fun, and we're expecting several thousand people there.
Yeah, I've said this before that about 2 years ago, I said I'm not going to the U.S. anymore. I just found it too unfree. I sort of found it like going to North Korea. Like, why am I bothering to go to this place? But what I told you, I think, a few months ago was that I was kind of regretting my decision after not going to Freedomfest this year. And I told you that I'm thinking about actually going this year just because I missed Freedomfest. I have to say it is the best freedom conference I've been to other than Anarchapulco. I have to just put that in. But other than Anarchapulco, it is by far the best, and I really did actually regret not going this year. So I probably will go this year. We'll see what happens.
You know, Jeff, it's amazing how many friends you meet there of like-minded and new friends and so on. We just signed a deal with the Cato Institute. They're bringing their biggest group of experts ever, including Peter Gutler and John Allison and David Bose and Richard Ron and Dan Mitchell. I mean, it just goes on about the people they're bringing. And Cato, the Cato lady who was in charge, she told me, she says, this is the conference that the Cato Institute loves to come. It's the most exciting, irreverent, and fun things to do. So we would be delighted to have you back, Jeff, and we definitely want to have you on the program, especially the LibX. I'm sure you have some radical proposals. Probably not as crazy as Doug, though. Doug Casey advocates, he told me this, I don't know if it's true or not, but he said that he thinks that you should be able to run red lights too. If you don't cause an accident, it's okay.
Oh, I might be more extreme than that.
Yeah, I think so.
I have no problem. Yeah, if you don't hurt anybody, yeah. Well, anyway, let's not go in too deep.
That's something you see in Mexico from time to time, though. I know that.
Oh yeah, we don't care about the lights down here. That's why I'm here. There's really no real rules or laws here. That's why I like it so much. But yeah, one of the things I did really like about Freedom Fest that is different from Anarchapulco, and that's actually part of the reason I started Anarchapulco. It's kind of funny as I think back upon it, was I loved Freedom Fest, but the thing I didn't like was there was so many non-anarchists there. So then I started Anarchapulco because of that, actually, now that I think back, my reasoning. But then what I realized after Anarchapulco was it is kind of fun to go to this other conference where it's not just anarchists, because you do get into some really great discussions and debates. And of course, it's not just about being around like-minded people. It's about being around people with other ideas and trying to convince them of your ideas, and then they try to do the same as well, which is also really fun.
Well, I think that you can refine your arguments when you're challenged on your position.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be doing that in this debate that I'm having with Larkin Rose, is that his name?
Yes.
And with Walter Block. I mean, now I've never met Larkin, so I don't know. But
you're going to have your hands full. Just so people know, you're going to be debating Minarchy's side and Larkin Rose, who you don't know that well, Mark, but he's very well known in the anarchist community, and I think you'll be quite nicely surprised at just how amazing he is at arguing his position. So you're going to have your hands full with him.
Well, I have done my homework, and I have read about his background, and pretty interesting background, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. He's one of those guys who really lives what he says, which is great. And you brought up the point about talking to other people with different viewpoints. I do remember, I think it was, what's his name, Richard Ron? Is that the guy with the eye patch?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at Freedom Fest, and I was with Judd Weiss, who I think you know, a photographer who does your events.
Yeah, sure.
And Judd tried to introduce me to him, and he said, "I don't talk to anarchists." So I think that was around when I said, I got to have my own anarchist conference. But then now that we do, I'm like, no, I want to go there and see if I can talk to Richard Ron. You should try to get me in a debate with him or something, so he has to talk to me. I don't know why you wouldn't not talk to anarchists. Like, I talk to anyone. I'll talk to a communist.
So he was serious?
He was dead serious. He walked away.
Oh my gosh. I mean, this is Freedom Fest. We do bill as the world's largest gathering of free minds, open-mindedness. But we do meet some people who have that kind of an attitude that this is so radical that I don't even want to waste my time. I mean, Yarnbrook has the same attitude, unfortunately, and he won't debate any anarchists. He made that very plain. And he'll debate John Mackey and people like that, but he refuses to debate anarchists. But, you know, it's really funny. My experience is that we have seen a change in people who have become more liberal, if I can use that term, in a very general, positive way, in terms of being more open-minded and being willing to talk to people who previously they were bitter enemies, and now they're at least willing to come to the same conference. And I won't mention any specific names, but it's been a really wonderful experience to see people to let some of these grudges fall behind and willingness to befriend each other instead of the constant fighting that goes on among libertarians. It's somewhat unfortunate, and I'm glad to see that trend changing, it seems to me.
Yeah, and I think your conference is a big part of it. We all have to get together in the same place and be around each other. And then some people do talk and some people do listen, and it does change sort of people's attitudes over time, which is great. And I've seen that as well. I've seen you. I'm sure you know very well. You've been in this sort of space for a long time. That the word anarchy almost used to be like, you know, you didn't even talk about it. It was too
bomb throwers.
Yeah, it was too radical, too crazy, and now it's becoming pretty a lot of people are, even the word libertarian, there's a good one. Before Ron Paul in 2008, even the word libertarian was looked at kind of as this weird, kind of strange idea. And in the last 10 years, it's almost become a household word that is not directly, like, people don't just hear it and say, oh, that's crazy. They actually are aware of it now. So it is really changing.
I think the libertarian view is also moved in that direction, where that's viewed as a more positive way. And it's primarily not from the fact that you have economic laissez-faire, but in the social area, social libertarianism has become very acceptable in today's world, in terms of gay marriage, in terms of drug legalization. These kinds of things are now in a very positive, are viewed in a positive light. And I think that has helped for this point of view. The biggest challenge that the anarchists have, though, of course, is the issue of fairness and inequality. These are the biggest arguments that Bernie Sanders and the socialists and they tend to make about for. In fact, we're going to have a big debate on progressive taxation, and you normally think, well, that's going to be a Bernie Madoff type of person. No, we have Lanny Ebenstein, who is written 2 biographies, one on Milton Friedman and the other on Friedrich Hayek, who are libertarians both. And so Lanny Ebenstein, who is a longtime friend who I regarded as a libertarian, is now advocating a very high level of progressive taxation. So he's become a social democrat. So he has shifted the other direction. And I am debating, and Steve Moore and I are debating him on the issue of progressive versus a flat tax. And maybe we should have you there so we have progressive tax, flat tax, and then your side would be no tax.
Yeah, I like the Ron Paul quote that he supports a flat tax, and by flat he means really flat, like zero. So yeah, that's the great thing about Freedomfest, I have to say again, is you bring in so many different people from different viewpoints, and you get them to debate each other, which is really great. And it's quite different from Anarchapulco, where pretty much everyone agrees on almost everything, but it's a lot of fun, and we try to just develop our what we're doing and try to develop our philosophy and our way of doing things on the beach in Acapulco, Mexico. So really glad you're coming down for that. I wanted to bring up one thing you brought up right off the top about Trump. When I saw that you put him in Freedomfest, I was just sitting back watching all the chaos that ensued after you announced that Donald Trump was going to be at Freedomfest. I'm sure you saw it all. And I thought it was a fairly brilliant move. Just as a promoter, you want to get the most people talking about your thing as possible. But it was interesting, and it's interesting to hear you say that you were kind of disappointed by your audience actually agreeing with him on a lot of things. And it actually has happened in the anarchist community. There's been one big name and one loser, but he's also fairly well known among some people. One is Stefan Molyneux. I don't know if you know much about him, but he really was a leader in the anarchist philosophy movement for a number of years. And he kind of has gone away from it now, and he's actually supporting Donald Trump in many ways. So that really got a lot of the anarchists talking. And there was another one, he's a lot less well known, and I don't like him very much, not even going to say his name, past Anarchast guest, by the way. But he also said he was a total anarchist, and now he supports Trump. So what I said about that was, it's interesting to see, because a lot of this is reactionary. It's reactionary, in my opinion, with many people towards this sort of refugee crisis, which is mostly been engineered, in my opinion, by the powers that be to kind of destroy Europe and cause all kinds of problems. But it's interesting that my take on it was that you really find out who's really pro-freedom and who really believes in freedom as their utmost principle when times get tough. So my opinion on what Stefan Molyneux and the other person said was that they have this fear that they're going to be overrun by Muslim hordes, and they're all going to be white genocide and all that sort of stuff. So they've given up on their ideas of freedom. So that was my take on it. What was your take on your audience's reaction to Donald Trump?
Well, I will tell you, the very first person who came up to me when we announced to everybody that Donald Trump was speaking was Roberto Salinas, who is from Mexico City. He's the president of the Mexican Business Forum, and he is a first-class individual. And he was literally shaking his finger at me. He says, "How dare you bring Donald Trump here after what he said about the Mexican people? It was so insulting." And I said, "You're absolutely right. And I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll have you give the very first question because he's willing to take questions." And so I lined him up, and he asked the very first question, and he quoted the Statue of Liberty, "You're tired, you're poor," and all of that sort of thing. And Trump came back and said, "Did the Mexican government pay you to come here to ask this question?" And actually, Roberto Salinas afterwards thanked me for having Trump come so that he could confront him on these issues, and he became a bit of a celebrity. His interview went viral in Mexico. So I feel pretty good about that. But I'd like to go back to this Syrian refugee problem, because I think it does raise the real issue of how do you deal with an overwhelming horde of people who are coming across the border because of what's happening in their own country, and they become political refugees and they need to leave. Well, when you read about what's happening in Germany, where during the holiday season, where they attacked women and they were raping women, and the police were, it was so shocking that the Syrian men would act like this, like when they're around women, they can do anything they want with them. It's an incredibly bad culture that has come, and it comes across the border of Germany, and they're having to face it. So, I mean, let's not mince words. You've got to, as an anarchist, you have to deal with those issues. How do you respond to that? Basically, the answer is we shouldn't have had them come in the first place. That's what many of the people in Germany, and that's kind of a Donald Trump answer to that kind of an issue. But this would be my first visit to your conference. I'll be very interested to see what the reaction is, because you're against violence. Obviously, somebody's using force against you. You have the right to defend yourself, and hopefully you would hope that the police would be around to protect you, which they weren't. Sad. It was a sad commentary.
Yeah, from my anarchist perspective, the whole thing, the refugees is caused by statism, by governments, by the U.S. government blowing up their country for no reason, including Libya as well, which has now been proven that Hillary Clinton actually did it because they were trying to put in a gold-backed African currency, and as soon as they attacked Libya, they put in a central bank the very next day. So this was all caused by statism. Then they housed them in Turkey, and then they unleashed them on Europe, which I think was planned, in order to cause chaos there, in order to bring in more government, more controls. So that's first of all. And then secondly, when you have welfare states, which is again all government, nothing to do with anarchy whatsoever, you do have people who want to come in and take advantage of those things. So you shouldn't have welfare states. And then as far as the police protecting you, everyone should be able to defend themselves and have their own gun. If they did, I don't think we'd have these problems. So all these problems are all caused by government, in my opinion.
Well, they're all buying pepper spray. They can't buy guns in Germany, but pepper spray has increased dramatically in sales in Germany.
Yeah, I think even that's somewhat outlawed, so they're trying to buy it through like black markets and states.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's crazy, all this stuff. But yeah, it's going to be great to have you down here at Anarchapulco. Really looking forward to seeing you here. Looking forward to your debate with Larkin Rose, which I think is going to be epic. And Walter Block, I'm looking forward to that, mostly just to learn, because you guys are going to be talking.
Let me just, if you don't mind, let me just mention, a lot of your listeners, viewers may not know what this debate is about with Walter Block. But I think that this is one of the biggest triumphs of Austrian economics in the last 40 years since Hayek won the Nobel Prize. What's happening is the federal government has adopted and is producing on a quarterly basis a measure of Hayek's triangle, which is a measure of spending at all stages of production. So it's an actual real statistic that is more accurately measures what's happening in the economy. And so I am absolutely thrilled about it. It's really my own statistic that they have adopted. And so I've written about it extensively, and I would encourage your listeners, just type in gross output and my name, and up will come information in Wikipedia, my own articles. I had a lead editorial in the Wall Street Journal about this. This is a very big deal that is countering Keynesian economics in a very big way, and it makes business and entrepreneurship and capital formation and technology far more important than government stimulus and consumer spending and all that sort of thing. So I'm very excited about it, and Walter has a criticism of gross output statistic, and so we're going to have a big discussion about it, and hopefully we'll come to some positive answers. So I'm looking forward to that very much.
Yeah, myself as well. And so that's coming up February 19th, 21st. This video will just be coming out, just a week or maybe 2 weeks before it. But there's still lots of cheap flights down to Mexico thanks to the bad economy, lower oil prices, and Ebola 2016, which they're calling, what's it called this year, Vika or something, some new health scare they put out to scare people from travel. So check that out. Right after that, by the way, is also, you're having a conference in the Bahamas, which I'll be speaking at. You've invited me to speak at. So let people know about that conference and also Freedomfest as well.
Right. So on March 16th through the 19th, we're meeting in the Bahamas on Paradise Island at the Atlantis Resort, which does have gambling and some other things that Las Vegas has and allows you to smoke and everything. So we wanted to do an offshore conference, and we're doing one in the Bahamas. It's called the Global Financial Summit. So if people go to gfs.freedomfest.com, they can read all about that. You and I are speaking. Grover Norquist is coming from Washington. So is Steve Moore from the Wall Street Journal. We have Alex Green from the Oxford Club who's going to be there. And we have a bunch of financial and economics people and so forth from around the world, Switzerland and Asia and so forth. So we're very excited about that. And so that's a geopolitical conference that's going to be a lot of fun, the Global Financial Summit. And then our big show, we'll have 2,500 people there, a much bigger show than the Global Summit. We'll be at Freedom Fest, July 13th through the 16th. We take over Planet Hollywood in Las Vegas, and it is a lot of fun. So we encourage you all to go to freedomfest.com and get all the details on that, and come join us. It's going to be a great conference.
Yeah, I think I will join you this year, barring any unusual circumstances in Vegas, much for the same reason that I wanted to go to your Bahamas conference, because there is poker and there is smoking and things like that. So 3 great conferences. If you can't make them all, try to make at least one. Anarchapulco, of course, coming up in a couple weeks. Right after that is a more investment-focused one in the Bahamas, and then Freedom Fest, which is just an all-out Freedom Fest. The name is a perfect name for it. It's everyone from every walk of life, anything to do with freedom. Really interesting conference. So check them all out. So I'll see you soon down here, Mark. Any final words?
Well, I always like to tell people I use a term that's used in Austrian economics, and it's called AEIOU, but you have to Google it to figure out what it means.
All right. People have the Google, so they should be able to do that. So that's it for Anarchast. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share down below. And that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.
Well, there's like an ego-based kind of conscious block to prevent yourself from going deep within yourself because you don't want to hurt yourself. But sometimes you need to understand the subconscious kind of pains, the experiences you had in order to deal with them. A lot of people in society suppress a lot of bad emotions instead of embracing them. And I think once you kind of get into this world, once you start kind of experimenting and learning and taking different substances, you learn to embrace the bad just like you do the good, not suppress.
Croatia still recognizes that this piece of land belongs to Serbia, and that Serbia already said that it is not their piece of land and they don't mind Croatian of Liberland on this territory, which was a very strong statement only 11 days after we started the country. And we are still, enjoying the benefits of that. We do have a kind of a silent support from Serbia for Liberland, and we are trying to multiply it. And we have a strong belief that with the new government, which is much more pro-liberty than the past one, which was rather socialist one.
From Acapulco, Mexico, this is Anarchast.